Breaking today, Meghan Markle breaks her agreement with King Charles and Buckingham Palace to leak to her friends at
Meghan's return to Britain did not begin with a public announcement, a palace statement, or an emotional reconciliation. It began with a private message, delivered through carefully chosen intermediaries, offering her something she had been denied for years, a controlled path back into royal life. At first, it was little more than a whisper moving through royal circles, a suggestion passed quietly between advisors, a question raised in private conversations. Could Meghan return to Britain without reopening every wound the family had spent years trying to hide? The proposal was careful because it had to be. No one was discussing a full restoration of Meghan's former position. There would be no return to life as a senior working royal, no permanent place inside the palace system, and no public admission that the institution had changed its judgment of her. Instead, the plan offered something smaller but symbolically powerful: limited appearances at selected charitable events, private family gatherings, and important royal ceremonies. For Harry, even that narrow opening carried enormous meaning. He believed it could become the first step toward repairing his strained relationship with King Charles. More than that, he saw an opportunity for Meghan to return on controlled terms and challenge the image that had followed her since leaving Britain. But the palace was not offering freedom. It was offering conditions. Media access would be restricted. Engagements would require approval. Accommodation would remain private and closely managed. Every public statement would be examined, and there would be clear limits on what Harry and Meghan could reveal about their meetings with the family. The invitation appeared generous from a distance, yet behind closed doors, it resembled a carefully written contract. Meghan hesitated. She wanted dignity. She wanted recognition. She wanted to prove that she could step back onto British soil without being treated as a defeated outsider. But returning meant entering the same institution she believed had failed to defend her when pressure, criticism, and suspicion had surrounded her. The offer promised protection, but she had heard promises before. Then came the assumption that would quietly destabilize the entire arrangement. Palace planners believed Catherine would support the comeback. They imagined her standing beside Meghan, calm and composed, creating a public image of unity powerful enough to silence years of hostility. Catherine's presence would not merely suggest politeness. It would signal forgiveness. That was why her cooperation was considered essential. There was only one problem. No one had actually asked her. Her approval had already been written into conversations, schedules, and possible appearances as though it were guaranteed. William noticed before the proposal formally reached them. He understood immediately that Catherine was being positioned as the emotional shield for a decision she had not made. Soon, a confidential briefing was prepared for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Inside it, Meghan's return was described not as a personal request, but as a necessary act of stability. But when the proposal finally reached the Prince and Princess of Wales, Catherine discovered that the palace was not asking for her opinion, it was quietly assigning her a role. Buried inside the palace proposal was a carefully constructed public moment. Catherine greeting Meghan, standing beside her, and offering the world a photograph of reconciliation. To officials, it was perfect symbolism. To Catherine, it felt like years of private pain had been reduced to a publicity strategy. The confidential plan was presented as measured, careful, and harmless. Meghan would attend either a royal-linked charity engagement or a private family gathering with enough public visibility to suggest progress, but not enough freedom to create uncertainty. Catherine's role had already been mapped out. She would welcome Meghan warmly, remain beside her during the most closely watched moments, and give no sign that tension still existed beneath the surface. To palace strategists, Catherine was the only person who could make the comeback believable. Charles could offer permission. Harry could offer loyalty. Officials could offer structure. But Catherine could offer something far more valuable: public trust. Her calm manner, disciplined silence, and reputation for duty could transform Meghan's return from a risky experiment into an image of royal forgiveness. Catherine understood that immediately. This was not simply a request for courtesy. Her image was being used to absorb criticism, calm suspicion, and protect the monarchy from accusations that old wounds remained unresolved. The palace needed her smile because words alone would not be enough. But behind that expectation were memories no briefing could erase. There had been disagreements, conflicting expectations, private misunderstandings, and years of emotional strain surrounding Harry and Meghan's departure. Catherine remembered what had been said publicly, what had remained unspoken privately, and how often silence had been demanded from those left inside the institution. Her resistance was not driven by revenge. She was not trying to humiliate Meghan or prevent Harry from rebuilding his relationship with Charles. What she could not accept was being asked to perform forgiveness before trust had even begun to return. Then, Catherine asked the question the room seemed determined to avoid. Had Meghan accepted any responsibility for the damage caused by interviews, accusations, and private family matters becoming public? The answer never came. Instead, officials spoke about moving forward. They said the monarchy could not remain trapped in the past. They argued that unity sometimes required difficult sacrifices. With every careful phrase, Catherine's suspicion deepened. The arrangement seemed designed to help Charles appear compassionate, Harry feel welcomed, Meghan reshape her image, and the palace regain control. Yet the people expected to make that illusion convincing were being asked to ignore their own pain. William remained outwardly controlled. He questioned security, media limits, Harry's commitments, and what would happen if Meghan later described private meetings publicly. Then, an aide suggested that Catherine's personal feelings might need to come second to the crown. William said nothing. But his silence had changed. Catherine said little during the meeting, but behind closed doors she finally told William what the palace had refused to hear, and her words changed the entire direction of Meghan's return. That evening, away from advisors and carefully rehearsed language, Catherine told William she could not support the plan as it stood. Her refusal was not dramatic. It was quiet, measured, and deeply personal, which made it far more serious than anyone inside the palace had anticipated. For the first time since the briefing, Catherine spoke without palace language surrounding her. She explained that the proposal was asking her to carry an emotional burden disguised as royal duty. It was not the possibility of Harry returning to his father that troubled her. She did not oppose reconciliation between Charles and his younger son, nor did she want the family's estrangement to continue forever. Her concern was the story the palace intended to tell. Meghan's return would be presented as proof that the deepest wounds had healed, even though no honest conversation had taken place. There had been no private reckoning, no clear acceptance of responsibility, and no agreement over what could be said publicly afterward. The palace wanted the appearance of peace before doing the painful work required to create it. Catherine warned that public unity without private accountability would produce another fragile arrangement built entirely on silence. It might survive one photograph or one carefully controlled event. But the first disagreement could destroy it, and when that happened, she feared the blame would return to her. Once she had been publicly positioned as Meghan's supporter, every future conflict would raise the same question. Why had Catherine failed to keep the peace? The palace was asking her to guarantee Meghan's conduct while giving her no control over the terms, no protection from later disclosures, and no voice in how the comeback would unfold. William listened without interrupting. He knew Catherine had absorbed years of tension without publicly defending herself. She had remained silent while private disputes became headlines and while loyalty to the institution demanded that she accept judgments she could not answer. But his own conflict was brutal. Harry was still his brother. Charles wanted peace before more time was lost. The monarchy needed stability. Yet Catherine was being asked to surrender her boundaries so everyone else could claim reconciliation. Then she made her position unmistakably clear. Civility was not endorsement. She would treat Meghan respectfully if they met. She would not create a scene, offer insults, or interfere with Harry's relationship with Charles, but she would not publicly campaign for Meghan's return or appear in a staged moment designed to imply trust that did not exist. Such a performance, she warned, could become a greater scandal if the truth later emerged. William finally answered. Palace advisors would not make promises in Catherine's name again. The next morning, he requested a second meeting with senior officials. Catherine would not attend. Neither would Harry nor Meghan. William entered that meeting determined to protect Catherine's boundaries, but he soon discovered that Meghan's comeback was tied to something far larger than one carefully managed appearance. What appeared to be a family reconciliation was also a battle over influence, access, and the future image of the monarchy. Meghan's return had been connected to private negotiations involving Harry's role, royal security, family events, and the legacy his children would inherit. Inside the second meeting, William learned that the proposed comeback was never limited to one appearance. Harry had been seeking a clearer position for himself and his family whenever they returned to Britain. He wanted certainty, not vague invitations that could disappear without explanation. That meant answers about security, private accommodation, family gatherings, ceremonial access, and whether Archie and Lilibet would be treated as distant visitors or as grandchildren of the king. For Harry, the question went beyond titles or public status. He feared his children could grow up separated from royal history, family traditions, and a legacy that belonged to them by birth. Each year of estrangement widened that distance. Every missed gathering became another memory they would never share. Charles understood the danger. A limited reconciliation, even an imperfect one, could stop the family division from defining his reign. Palace advisors also feared that continued separation would overshadow future royal milestones. Weddings, memorials, birthdays, and state occasions could all become public reminders of who was absent and why. But Harry had made one condition clear. He would not rebuild his royal connection while Meghan remained publicly excluded. That demand divided the palace. Some advisors believed bringing Meghan back under strict controls was the only way to regain stability. Others warned that her return would reopen every unresolved accusation, every private grievance, and every conflict the monarchy had tried to contain. Once again, Catherine appeared in their solution. Because direct conversations between Meghan and senior royals had repeatedly broken down, officials expected Catherine to become the bridge. Her presence would soften the arrangement, protect Charles, reassure Harry, and make Meghan feel accepted. William rejected the idea immediately. Catherine could not be made responsible for solving a crisis created years before this proposal existed. If Harry wanted the arrangement to succeed, William argued, then Harry must personally guarantee its boundaries. Private meetings had to remain private. Public conduct had to remain respectful. Future interviews could not be used to reveal conversations that others had entered in good faith. The room became uneasy. Officials admitted they were reluctant to demand written commitments. Harry might view such conditions as an insult, or worse, as proof that the family still distrusted him. Yet without firm guarantees, William saw only another fragile agreement built on hope. Then came the warning. Without Catherine's visible support, Meghan might reject the entire plan. Harry could withdraw with her, and William would be blamed for destroying the comeback before it had even begun. The palace believed that warning would force William to retreat. Instead, it pushed him toward a decision no one expected him to make publicly or privately. Catherine's answer arrived without anger, accusation, or negotiation. She would not endorse Meghan's comeback, appear in a staged reconciliation, or allow her image to be used as proof that the past had been resolved. Then, William quietly informed the palace that he supported her completely. The refusal was formal, controlled, and impossible to misunderstand. Catherine was not demanding that Meghan be banned from Britain. She was not trying to prevent Harry from seeing Charles, nor was she asking the king to close the door on his son's family. She accepted that private contact might continue and that future royal occasions could place them in the same room. But civility had limits. Catherine would behave respectfully at unavoidable family events. She would not create public tension or undermine Charles's efforts to repair his relationship with Harry. What she would not do was stand beside Meghan in a carefully arranged appearance designed to sell a reconciliation that had never happened privately. The reaction inside the palace was immediate. The entire comeback strategy depended on Catherine making the moment emotionally believable. Without her, the plan lost its most powerful symbol. Charles could welcome Meghan. Officials could approve her presence, yet only Catherine could create the impression that the deepest personal conflict had finally ended. Advisors turned to William. They expected him to persuade his wife to reconsider. They spoke of duty, stability, and the damage another public division could cause. They warned that Catherine's refusal might destroy months of quiet negotiation. William did not move. Instead, he informed them that no engagement involving Catherine would be promised, scheduled, or announced without her direct approval. The palace had assumed her cooperation once. It would not happen again. When officials argued that royal duties sometimes required personal feelings to be set aside, William rejected the idea completely. The monarchy, he believed, could not continue demanding loyalty while dismissing the emotional cost carried by those protecting it. Catherine had remained silent through years of tension. That silence was not permission to use her. The decision came with pain. Supporting Catherine meant risking another confrontation with Harry. It could close the door on a broader reconciliation and deepen a division William had once hoped could be repaired. But he insisted on one boundary. Harry and Meghan's relationship with Charles was separate from their relationship with the Wales family. William would not publicly attack the comeback. He would not campaign against Meghan's return or embarrass his father. But his household would not be used to legitimize it. When Meghan learned of Catherine's refusal, she did not see a boundary. She saw a verdict. To her, it proved that the future king and queen intended to keep her permanently outside the royal circle. Harry's response was swift. He demanded a direct explanation from William. Catherine's refusal had been quiet, but once Harry learned William had supported it, the battle shifted from palace strategy to a deeply personal confrontation between two brothers. Harry did not see Catherine's decision as a personal boundary. He saw it as a royal verdict on his wife, his marriage, and the life he had built outside the palace. When he confronted William, years of resentment returned with a force neither brother could control. Harry requested a private conversation almost immediately. He did not want another message passed through advisors or another carefully softened explanation. He wanted William to tell him directly why Catherine's approval had been removed from the plan, and whether the Wales household had ever intended to give Meghan a genuine opportunity to return. His accusation went further. Harry believed William and Catherine had become the quiet gatekeepers of the monarchy's future, controlling who could stand close to the crown and who would remain outside it. Charles might still be king, but William represented what came next, and Catherine's popularity, Harry argued, gave her the power to shape public opinion without saying a word. If Catherine refused to stand beside Meghan, millions would interpret that silence as condemnation. In Harry's mind, Meghan could never receive a fair chance under those conditions. William rejected the accusation. Catherine was not banning Meghan from Britain, blocking contact with Charles, or interfering with private family meetings. But allowing Meghan to return was not the same as forcing Catherine to endorse her publicly. That distinction exposed the deepest divide between the brothers. Harry believed loyalty meant defending family in public, especially when criticism had become relentless. William believed public unity had to be earned through private trust. A photograph could not repair what honest conversations had failed to address. Then Harry raised Archie and Lilibet. He warned that Catherine's refusal would deepen the separation between the children and their royal cousins, turning an adult dispute into a permanent family divide. William's restraint weakened. He refused to accept the children being used as pressure in a conflict they had not created. Their future relationships, he argued, should not depend on Catherine performing forgiveness for the cameras. Harry struck back with an older wound. Catherine, he claimed, had always been protected by the institution, while Meghan had been exposed, judged, and left to defend herself. William defended his wife with equal force. Catherine's silence had not meant protection from pain. She had endured accusations without publicly answering because duty demanded restraint. She had carried the cost quietly, and William would not allow that silence to be mistaken for weakness. Neither brother moved. Harry demanded visible respect for Meghan. William demanded private accountability before public endorsement. Finally, Harry issued his warning. If the palace continued with a plan that welcomed him while treating Meghan as an embarrassment to be managed, he would withdraw from the arrangement entirely. Harry believed his withdrawal threat would force Charles to intervene against William, but the king's response revealed how deeply the monarchy had already divided into competing loyalties. Charles had wanted reconciliation without confrontation, Harry's return without renewed scandal, and Meghan's presence without reopening old wounds. Now those hopes were collapsing. To save the plan, the king would have to challenge William, overrule Catherine, or accept that royal peace could not be manufactured. The accounts reaching Charles could not have been more different. Harry described Meghan as being deliberately humiliated by the future king and queen. William insisted that Catherine was being pressured into lending her image to a reconciliation that did not exist. Senior advisors warned that if the arrangement failed, the collapse would become another public symbol of a family unable to control its own divisions. Charles understood Harry's anger. He knew his son did not want to bring Meghan and their children back to Britain only to have them treated as tolerated outsiders. He also recognized the fear beneath Harry's threat, that every visit would become another reminder that his family no longer knew where it belonged. Yet Catherine's position was equally difficult to dismiss. She was not trying to block Harry's relationship with his father. She was refusing to become the public face of forgiveness when private trust had never been rebuilt. Charles could ask for courtesy. He could not easily command sincerity. There was another danger. William was not merely an angry brother. He was the heir. Forcing his household into the plan could poison cooperation between the king and the future monarchy at the highest possible level. Searching for another solution, Charles privately asked whether Sophie or Anne could stand beside Meghan instead. Both carried loyalty, experience, and public respect. But advisors gave him the answer he did not want. Neither woman carried Catherine's symbolism. A welcome from them might suggest politeness. Only Catherine could make the public believe the deepest conflict had ended. Charles's frustration hardened. Years of private pain were now shaping ceremonial plans, charitable appearances, family invitations, and the future cohesion of the crown. The monarchy had survived through an unwritten rule. When the institution required unity, personal feelings disappeared. Catherine was quietly refusing to obey that rule when unity demanded deception. William made the choice even clearer. He told Charles he would accept responsibility for every consequence of supporting his wife. If Harry withdrew, if the press blamed him, or if the comeback failed, William would carry that burden. But Catherine would not be ordered into a false display. Charles finally understood that forcing her participation could create a crisis greater than the one he was trying to prevent. He approved a reduced plan. Harry and Meghan would receive limited access, controlled appearances, and private contact with the king. The joint appearance with William and Catherine was removed. The compromise prevented an immediate family explosion, but it also sent Meghan a message she could not ignore. She might be permitted to return, yet acceptance remained beyond her reach. Meghan's comeback survived, but not in the form she had been promised. There would be no photograph beside Catherine, no carefully staged embrace, and no royal endorsement strong enough to silence her critics. She could return to Britain, but she would return under the shadow of rejection. The palace moved forward with a smaller, tightly controlled arrangement. Harry and Meghan would be allowed private contact with Charles, carefully selected engagements, and limited access to royal family occasions. Every detail would be managed. Every appearance would be measured. Most importantly, William and Catherine would remain outside the plan. For Meghan, accepting those terms carried a painful contradiction. Returning could show that she had not been defeated, that she could enter Britain without surrendering her dignity. But it could also confirm that the Wales household had successfully restricted her position before she had even arrived. She was being permitted near the monarchy while remaining separated from the people who represented its future. Charles could offer a welcome, but William's distance carried another message. Catherine's refusal made it unmistakable. Meghan might be acknowledged as family, yet she would not be publicly embraced by the next king and queen. Harry urged her to continue. He argued that no damaged relationship could be repaired through one visit, one conversation, or one carefully managed event. A place in Britain would have to be rebuilt slowly. Walking away now, he feared, would allow the palace to claim they had rejected the opportunity themselves. Catherine remained completely silent. She gave no public explanation, issued no private attacks through advisors, and made no attempt to embarrass Meghan. Her silence reinforced the position William had defended. This was a boundary, not a campaign. William also avoided confrontation. Yet inside royal circles, every absence and altered arrangement was examined for evidence that the split had become permanent. Outside the palace, the battle over meaning began. Meghan's supporters described Catherine's refusal as cold and calculated. Catherine's defenders called it self-protection after years of public strain. Both sides saw the same decision and found proof of what they already believed. Charles hoped time might soften the hostility, but there was still no direct private conversation, no honest reckoning, and no shared agreement about the past. At a later family gathering, Meghan and Catherine were both present, treated with perfect courtesy and kept carefully apart. The monarchy achieved order, but not reconciliation, politeness, but not forgiveness. William's decision had established something deeper. His household would no longer absorb every crisis created by the wider family. Whether Meghan's comeback marked the beginning of a slow return or proved she could enter Britain without ever truly returning to the royal family remained unanswered. And as the palace closed the doors behind another carefully controlled encounter, one truth remained impossible to hide. Meghan's greatest obstacle was no longer royal protocol, but the trust that had quietly disappeared behind it.